Flowscapes, Formscapes and Mindscapes, Cosmology of Change and Integral Practices of Movement. Let's get back to the title. Formscapes relate to beingness, thus to ontologies, the study of what is, of what to be means, of what beingness is. Formscapes relate to changes, flows, and so to the field that would be called in philosophy process philosophy or phenomenology, although changes are just one part of the phenomenon and beings are another part, complementary part. Mindscapes relate to epistemologies. They relate to awareness, consciousness, which are all different ways of describing what can be known, thus what can be first perceived, memorized, interpreted, and then made sense of. In all the worldviews, like the ones articulated in all the Hermetic philosophy, you'd have ideas like the relationship between the mystical experience, the gnosis, which is the inner sense made of the experience. This sense is a feeling, or it's an internal digestion, but which does its digestion that comes piecemeal, without or prior to analysis and categorizations, definitions of things. From the gnosis, we infer abilities to act, which in this part will be called magic, the ability to generate change, creation. And the last part is the part related to like the philosophical hermetic sense, the ability to perceive and thus transmit and communicate external sense made out of seeing the content of the internal sense and experience into a language, into a frame of reference that's common to all people communicating with it. So this is the idea of experiencing something, interpreting, perceiving and interpreting it, making inner sense of it, out of it, acting on it, changing it, or deriving abilities to change later interactions with it, and then the ability to transmit this knowledge, this experience to others. This mystical aspect, like the aspect related to the internal meaning of things, or the informational structure of things, as opposed to their outer forms or outer expressions, mirrors exactly in this model what would happen with the actual manifested world. So when we train any art, we will need to have experiences, which will be based on reception of informations, energies, matter, perceived and interpreted inwardly by internal gnosis, ability to make sense out of it, which will be perception, interpretation, the mental realm, which in turn will translate into abilities to act through the body, through the skeletal muscular system and the soft tissue system. So either to react, to respond when we become responsible, able to respond, or to interact when we co-create the world. Or you could even like make a distinction between co-creation and interaction. Co-creation would be the last aspect of it. So these four fields would closely relate to what we've seen before. Beingness is at first the experience of the world. Gnosis is the mindscape, the first filter of mindscape, the first ability of the mind to actually perceive like all the stimuli and weave them into a tapestry of percepts that are made sense of into the sensorium. If you picture if you want to deeply understand something, you can go to its opposite. What happens when we have, say, stimuli? You have experiences like being turned around in a dryer for clothes. So you tumbled around with barely any sense of what's up, down, no reference point, no complete chaos of stimuli. If you cannot make sense of what you're perceiving, although you do have the experience, you do not have the understanding, the comprehension. You cannot seize the elements and hold them. It's like a jelly, a goo. You don't know where one part begins, where the other ends. So the concept of gnosis is this comprehension. I see something and I take it with me. But at this stage it's an internal and personal comprehension. Then the reapplication through the comprehension of the world, of what I have understood inwardly, this application outwards provides power. The inward application provides another type of power too. Like one, the outwards power is the power to act, to change. It's the effectual magic. You can effect changes, you can create things. And the internal power that comes from understanding what happens around and out of it, creating an inner responsibility of how I react inwardly to things instead of how I act upon the world. All this framework of reacting, responding, interacting and co-creating can be expressed externally. You can actually change what happens around, or it can be expressed fully internally. You can let go of all the things that happen around and change mostly the way you relate to it, the sense you make of it, and your basic reception of it. If you could take any terrible experience and slightly shift your perspective, and instead of suffering it into your body and nervous system, say that you perceived it as though you were at the movies. But at the movies, instead of going to see a love scene, you went to see a horror movie or a very rough action movie. There you perceive very negative content, but you do not make sense of it in the same way. You can actually decide to put yourself in a fear situation for pleasure, to enjoy it. That's what people do all the time with going into the crazy rides of any fair or any attraction park. You ask for the experience of uneasiness, of going past the boundaries of comfort and sometimes abilities. And you can do this willingly. So the same could be done inside. The fact that we perceive things as good or bad is based on a value judgment and sort of obviously biological memories. So what's deemed bad is basically what will bring you closer to biological extinction. So a lot of reflexes are built in to prevent that. But on another level, you find many situations where you can actually be a witness to situations that would be deemed really negative. Actually, you can think of all drama as being entirely made of like bad things happening, evil people interacting with the good guys, so that there would be a plot, so that there would be changes, inner and outer changes that could give substance to the story. So all the things we read about, all the things we watch, are generally based on the negative polarity, meaning that if things are completely perfect, there is absolutely no drive for any type of change, any type of action, any type of evolution, any type of change. What drives change is a perception of something wrong, something bad, something hurtful, something painful. And this perception will create a very strong repulsive force that will drive us to movement, to change, to evolution, to new symbiosis, to eventually to self-destruction too. So if we go back to the root question, what is, what becomes of what is, or what does what is, and how can we know it, how can we perceive it, and how can they know it and perceive it. How can we know it when we're the ones acting? How can we know it when we're the ones observing? How can we know it, and what is knowledge? What means knowledge? All these ideas are what forms the background of this idea of Formscapes, Flowscapes and Mindscapes. The relation made between practical applications and say outer philosophy with its ontology, epistemology, phenomenology, process dynamics, whatnot, and esoteric sciences, just forms of knowledge that seek not the understanding of what happens horizontally through the plane of manifestation, but what happens in between levels of beings, or level of beingness. What happens not at the scale of the material and energetic fields of the beings as expressed in their structures and movements and whatnot, but what happens prior and after in the informational fields, like the pre-existing or coexisting field of information that drives the changes which will affect or generate the forms. So the relationship with the practical is of the same order as the relationship drawn in between the scientific and the esoteric. We basically consider what's scientific, like what's observed from the observation of matter and changes of matter, the dynamics of matter. We consider it as completely unrelated or unrelatable to the field of fancy that we consider in modern times esotericism to be. Although if you go back in time, all the modern science is an outgrowth of some of the branches of what we call esotericism now. So esotericism in this meaning is close to the meaning of occultism. It's the study of what's hidden. And the study of what's hidden as opposed to the study of what's obvious or external, like exotericism or physical natural sciences. The difference between the two is the same as the difference between the plan of a building and the building itself. I can study forever a real building. I can study its materials, I can study the actual techniques used to assemble it, to connect the different pieces together. I can study at different scales the materials, the shapes. I can study the interactions of the flows of matter, of elements around. I can study an infinity of things. Sociological aspect, I can study the economical aspect, I can study the link to culture, to whatnot. But still, this will not be the same, and this will not give me any information or it will give me some information, but it will not give me all the informations as to what brought the mind or to create or decide on these specific shapes, materials and whatnot. As I said, it will give me some idea. If a building is made of what's present around, you'll get a very easy understanding of why the materials were selected. But the shape of the building, the way it's assembled, and the way the shape of the rooms, the way they are connected, all these things, they relate to ideas. They relate to abstractions, which are contents in the modern meaning of the world, and the words. This abstraction is a dragging out of ideas from the material world. You turn the material world into your inner virtual reality that you can play with and change and analyze at will. In between there's a translation process, and you get the usual quote of translation is betrayal. Traduction et trahison. Because the alchemical process of translating something changes a lot of its components. But with the internal aspects of things, now they can be played in parallel universes, and you can create many shapes, you can create many structures, you can create many combinations of material, building blocks and whatnot, to see what it gives before actually trying it out. And when you try it out, due to this idea of virtualization, you can try something big at a small scale, and you can start with a model instead of doing the big thing first. So the other aspect of this abstraction concept would be the older Platonic aspect, which is that the information realm pre-exists and sort of dominates hierarchically the manifested realm or the material realm. So in this aspect, abstraction is the extraction of the manifested, of a deeper form of being, of beingness, that pertains to the imaginal realm or the ideal realm, the archetypal realm. So the difference is subtle in between both, and you'll find many philosophies that sort of weave their ways around both or connect both. But still, with this abstraction, we are able to connect things that seem completely unrelated. If we go back to the ideal realm, at one point things start from the unity of consciousness, or the unity of the idea, or the imaginal, or whatever depiction you use. If you start from the material and natural realm, then it's the same. The storyline of evolution that's used now goes from infinitely many forms of evolutions back to fewer and fewer and fewer, until you go from one massive realm to another, one massive sort of scale of classification to another. So you find that in the usual categorization of species, going towards regnum and beyond. But if you go beyond, you'd find the differentiation between biology, the study of life, chemistry, or before you could even do like organic chemistry, the study of the forerunners of life, or first forms of complex molecular systems, self-replicating and whatnot. So I use life in the limited meaning of the word here. In its broad sense, life would be change over time of what is born, so of a new manifestation, and it would apply to anything. But life as we understand it, or as we describe it in most of the modern sciences, is a subset of this. And so this reversing of the zoom goes from biology to chemistry, from chemistry to physics, from physics to metaphysics. What's before physics, what's above physics. And a relationship we'll try to weave in these videos between forms, movements, processes, changes, and perception, awareness, understanding, sciences, esotericism, consciousness. Will take a fractal pattern. It will reoccur all scales, all levels. So that's it for now.